They stole the pleasure of eating from you, and the worst of all is that it wasn't even necessary. If you have diabetes or know someone who has it, you have probably heard this phrase in some medical office: no sweets, no desserts. If you want to live well, forget about sugar forever. And you, as a responsible person who wants to take care of your health, accepted it. You stopped eating what you liked. You learned to say no at every birthday, at every family gathering, at every moment when someone put a dessert on the table. But I want to ask you a very honest question. Did that total restriction work? Did it bring you the control they promised? Because if you are here watching this video, it is very likely that the answer is no. And that is not your fault. It is the result of incomplete information that millions of people receive every day around the world. Today, I am going to tell you something that they should have told you from the first moment you were diagnosed with diabetes. There are desserts, real desserts, sweet and delicious, that not only do not spike your glucose, but have the capacity to help your body regulate it naturally. And today I am going to present to you the 3 most powerful ones backed by real scientific research so that you can enjoy food again without fear and without guilt. But before getting to them, I need you to understand why we got here. Why so many well-intentioned doctors end up giving their diabetic patients advice that, although it comes from a correct place, is profoundly incomplete. When you are diagnosed with type 2 diabetes, the first thing your doctor sees is a high number of glucose in the blood. And the most immediate logic is simple. If there is too much sugar, you have to eliminate the sugar. It is as if your house flooded and the solution was to cover the faucet of the bathroom sink, ignoring that the main pipe is broken in the basement. They attack the visible symptom and ignore the deep mechanism that is causing the problem. The mistake is not in taking care of what one eats. That care is absolutely necessary. The mistake is in treating all sweets as if they were the same poison, when the biological reality is much more nuanced than that. It is not the same to eat an industrial cookie full of refined flour, colorings, and high fructose corn syrup as to eat a dessert made with natural ingredients that have a completely different behavior inside your body. And here is the paradox that science has been documenting for years. When a person with diabetes undergoes a total and absolute restriction of anything that has a sweet flavor, their body enters a state of chronic stress. That stress activates a hormone that you know well, cortisol. And sustained elevated cortisol does exactly the opposite of what you are looking for. It orders the liver to release glucose into the bloodstream, even when you have eaten absolutely nothing. That is one of the reasons why many people with diabetes wake up with high glucose in the mornings, despite having dined correctly the night before. Unintelligent restriction can be sabotaging your own treatment. Now, what I am going to show you in this video is not magic. I am not going to promise that these 3 desserts are going to replace your medication or that they are going to cure your diabetes overnight. What I can guarantee you, because scientific evidence supports it, is that these foods work in favor of your metabolism, help improve the sensitivity of your cells to insulin, reduce the inflammation that is at the root of metabolic resistance, and do so while you enjoy something tasty, something that reminds you that living well does not mean living with deprivations. The first of these desserts works with one of the most powerful fats that exists for the health of the diabetic. The second contains an ingredient that several studies have compared with great care to the effect of certain medications for glucose. And the third, the one I am going to present to you at the end, was the one that generated the most surprise in nutritional research circles, because its mechanism of action acts even hours after having consumed it, improving the glucose levels of the next meal. Stay until the end. What you are about to learn can completely change the relationship you have with your diet and, above all, with your own health. It is not the sugar that is destroying your pancreas. It is something that no one has explained to you clearly, and today we are going to talk about that. To understand what really happens inside your body when diabetes advances, I want to ask you to imagine something very simple. Imagine that insulin is a key, and each of your cells is a door that needs to be opened to receive the glucose that gives it energy. In a healthy person, that key fits perfectly in the lock, the door opens, the glucose enters, and the body works in harmony. But in a person with insulin resistance, something very different happens. Those doors change their lock without notifying anyone. The key remains the same, but it no longer fits. The glucose stays outside, accumulating in the blood while your cells continue without receiving the energy they need. That is insulin resistance. And the most important question you should ask yourself is not how much sugar you are eating, but what is causing those locks to be damaged. The answer in the vast majority of cases is low-grade chronic inflammation. It is not the inflammation one feels when twisting an ankle or when having a fever. It is a silent, invisible inflammation that lives inside your body for years without giving obvious symptoms, but that slowly deteriorates the ability of your cells to respond to insulin. And here comes something that is going to surprise you. Many of the products that the market sells as suitable for diabetics or sugar-free are in reality some of the greatest promoters of that silent inflammation. Artificial sweeteners such as aspartame and sucralose alter the composition of your intestinal microbiome. That ecosystem of bacteria that lives in your intestine and that has a direct connection with your metabolism. Refined flours, although they have no sweet flavor, raise glucose even faster than table sugar. And the refined vegetable oils present in most industrial desserts generate pro-inflammatory compounds in your body that activate exactly the mechanisms that worsen insulin resistance. In other words, many people with diabetes are trying to take care of themselves by consuming products that, without knowing it, are feeding the problem from within. The good news is that nature has an answer for all this. There are foods that do exactly the opposite. Turn off that inflammation, repair cellular sensitivity to insulin, and do so in a way that your body recognizes and accepts without resistance. And 3 of those foods, combined in the correct way, can become the most intelligent desserts you have ever tried in your life. Allow me to show them to you. Sweet, delicious, and medicinal. For centuries, nature hid in its simplest foods the most sophisticated mechanisms to protect human health. And today, modern science is just beginning to decipher what our grandparents already intuited, that eating well does not mean eating without pleasure. It means knowing what to eat. Let's go with the first one. The avocado mousse with pure cocoa is probably the most intelligent dessert that exists for a person with diabetes. And I know that upon hearing avocado in a dessert, many are going to raise an eyebrow. But let me explain why this combination is so powerful. The avocado is one of the food's richest in monounsaturated fats that exist in nature, and these fats have a very specific function within the metabolism of the diabetic. They improve the fluidity of cellular membranes, which facilitates that the insulin receptors on the surface of your cells function correctly. Remember the analogy of the key and the lock. The monounsaturated fats from avocado help those locks to work again. The great pre-dimed study carried out in Europe with thousands of participants demonstrated that a diet rich in these fats significantly reduces the markers of insulin resistance in people with metabolic diseases. But avocado alone is half the story. Pure cocoa, without added sugar and without the milk mixture that turns chocolate into a problem, contains a family of compounds called flavonoids, and in particular one called epicatechin. This compound has the capacity to activate an enzyme inside your muscle cells known as AMPK. Do not worry about the technical name. What is important is what it does. This enzyme opens an alternative pathway for glucose to enter your cells without needing insulin. It is as if in front of a door with a damaged lock, the epicatechin from cocoa opened a side window. The glucose enters anyway, and your blood level drops. To prepare this dessert, you only need pulp of ripe avocado, pure cocoa powder without sugar, a little almond milk, and if you wish a touch of sweetness, a few drops of natural stevia. Mix everything, refrigerate for an hour, and you have a creamy, rich dessert and a complete ally of your metabolism. The second dessert is the natural red fruit gelatin with Ceylon cinnamon. And here I want to stop at something very important, because there is a mistake that can turn this dessert into a problem instead of a solution. When I say natural gelatin, I am not talking about the colored powder gelatins they sell in the supermarket. Those are loaded with artificial colorings, hidden sugars, and synthetic flavorings. I mean the gelatin made with pure collagen, which is obtained in natural stores or in clean presentations without additives. This natural gelatin is an extraordinary source of glycine, an amino acid that contributes to repairing the intestinal wall. And this matters a lot in diabetes because there is a direct connection between increased intestinal permeability, what some call leaky gut, and the chronic inflammation that deteriorates insulin sensitivity. Healing the intestine is in many cases one of the most important steps to recover glycemic control. The red fruits that are added to this gelatin, strawberries, blueberries, raspberries, contain anthocyanins, which are the pigments that give them that intense color. And these anthocyanins have been studied for their capacity to improve the expression of the glucose transporter GLUT4, which is the mechanism that allows your muscle cells to absorb glucose more efficiently. Some researchers have compared this effect with great caution and without exaggerations to the mechanism of action of certain medications for diabetes. And then there is the cinnamon, but not just any cinnamon. The Ceylon cinnamon, which is the true cinnamon, originating from Sri Lanka, contains a compound called MHCP that partially imitates the action of insulin in the body. The problem is that in the market, there exists another variety called cassia cinnamon, which is much cheaper and more common, and that contains high levels of coumarin, a substance that in frequent quantities can be toxic for the liver. The visual difference is simple. Ceylon cinnamon has a softer texture and rolls in multiple fine layers like parchment. Cassia is thicker and harder. When you buy cinnamon, make sure the label says specifically Ceylon or Ceylon. That small difference can completely change the result. Now we come to the third dessert. This was the one I mentioned at the beginning of the video as the one that generated the most surprise in nutritional research circles. And the reason it surprises so much is its mechanism of action. Its benefits are not limited to the moment you consume it. They act hours later during the next meal. We are talking about the chia seed pudding with almond milk. The chia seeds contain a type of soluble fiber that upon entering in contact with liquid forms a thick and viscous gel in your intestine. This gel acts as a physical barrier that slows down the speed at which the carbohydrates from any meal are absorbed into the bloodstream. In practical terms, it means that when you eat chia at night, the glucose from your breakfast the next day rises in a much slower and gradual way. Researchers call it the second meal effect, and it is documented in studies published in the European Journal of Clinical Nutrition. It is as if the chia installed a speed filter inside your digestion that continues working hours after you have finished eating. And the almond milk provides something that most doctors do not mention, but that is absolutely critical in diabetes: magnesium. It is estimated that more than 80% of people with type 2 diabetes have insufficient levels of this mineral. And magnesium is essential for more than 300 enzymatic reactions of the body to function correctly, including those that regulate glucose metabolism. Correcting magnesium deficiency is not a minor detail in the treatment of the diabetic. It is in many cases a fundamental piece that was missing. To prepare this pudding, you only need 2 tablespoons of chia seeds for each cup of unsweetened almond milk. Mix, let it rest in the refrigerator overnight, and the next day you have a creamy and soft texture. You can add red fruits on top, a touch of Ceylon cinnamon, and you have the most powerful dessert from this list ready to consume. 3 desserts, 3 different mechanisms, all working in favor of your body. You are not condemned, you are finally informed. Think about everything you carried during these years. The family gatherings where you looked at the dessert from afar, the birthdays where you learned to say no with a forced smile, the feeling that taking care of your health meant giving up a part of the pleasure of living. All that was real. Your effort was real, but it is also real that no one gave you the complete information you deserved from the beginning. What you learned today is not a trick or an empty promise. It is biochemistry. It is the result of years of scientific research that demonstrates something that goes completely against the most repeated advice in medical offices, that a diabetic can eat sweets as long as they know what sweet to eat and why. The avocado mousse with pure cocoa works from the membranes of your cells, opening alternative pathways for glucose to enter without depending exclusively on an insulin that your body no longer processes efficiently. The red fruit gelatin with Ceylon cinnamon acts on the silent inflammation that is at the root of the problem, repairs your intestine, and provides compounds that imitate the action of insulin naturally. And the chia pudding with almond milk installs a regulation system inside your digestion that continues protecting your glucose hours after you finished eating while delivering the magnesium that your body has needed for years without knowing it. Now, how do you start? I am not going to ask you to change your entire diet overnight. Drastic and sudden changes rarely work, and in older people, they can generate more stress than benefit. What I recommend is something much simpler and sustainable. During the first week, choose only one of these 3 desserts and incorporate it 3 times in your afternoons or nights. Observe how you feel. Record your glucose if you have a glucometer at home. Allow your body to adapt to these new allies calmly and without pressure. In the second week, you can add a second dessert. And by the third week, the 3 will be integrated naturally into your routine without feeling like a sacrifice or a medical protocol, but as a pleasure that also takes care. There is one more thing I need to tell you, and I say it with all the respect you deserve. If you are currently taking metformin, insulin, or another medication to control your diabetes, talk to your doctor before making significant changes in your diet. Not because these foods are dangerous, quite the opposite. I say it because these desserts are so effective in improving insulin sensitivity that in some cases they may require an adjustment in the dose of your medication, and that adjustment must be supervised by a professional. Nature is powerful and potency always deserves respect. Controlling diabetes is not living less, it is living differently and better. It is discovering that the human body has a capacity for recovery that conventional medicine often underestimates. It is understanding that every decision you make in your kitchen is also a decision about your health, about your energy, about the quality of your years to come. You got here because you care about your well-being. That is not a small thing. In a world full of contradictory information, of products that promise miracles, and of diagnoses that paralyze, you chose to inform yourself. That is already an act of courage. If this video brought you something new, if you felt that any of these ideas touched a part of your story, I ask you to share it with someone who also needs it, a family member, a friend, someone you know who has been struggling with this in silence for years. Sometimes the correct information arrives at the exact moment when a person needs it the most. I am Dr. John Lupin, and I will be here every week with more tools, more science, and more respect for your health, because you do not deserve only to live, you deserve to live well. Until next time.